But the question now, on the lips of many Nigerians, who is right and who is wrong? What is fact and what is fiction? What happens next and what is the aftermath? Tonight, Babajide Ogunsowo, who is the founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's chief data analyst, is here to share more facts and vital insight on the war on terrorism and the religious concerns surrounding it. Thank you very much, Babajide, for joining us on the news at 10.
Yeah, good evening.
And is there any evidence there is a religious war ongoing in Nigeria, and do we have actual facts?
So we'll speak to the facts tonight. We'll speak to a lot of hard facts tonight, but I'd like to start from a slightly different perspective, and that's because exactly around this time, 4 decades ago, the world was in a state of shock. Exactly on this day in Moscow at the Tchaikovsky Center, the world saw a new world champion, the youngest champion ever in the world emerged, Garry Kasparov. And as I said, according to the commentators then, the world was put in a state of shock at 22-year-old Garry Kasparov. But today we're not talking about that state of shock or exactly where Garry Kasparov is today. Tonight there are 3 states I want to talk about, which is very important to what you've talked about. The first is the state of religion in Nigeria, Africa, and the rest of the world. The second is the state of the statistics on violent extremism in Nigeria and around the world. And the third is perhaps the most important, the state of the solution. So let's start by looking at the state of religion in Nigeria, Africa, and the rest of the world, because it allows us to understand exactly what is going on. What is in front of us is based on the Pew Research when they asked Christians how much is religion important in their lives. We can clearly see 82% of Christians in Nigeria say religion is important in their lives. Look at in the UK, only 11%. In the US, 68%. France, 12%. Spain, 30%. The summary here is that in Nigeria and in a lot of other parts in Africa, religion, Christians say religion plays an important role in their lives. Why is this important? We can clearly see a lot of the European countries where Christians say yes, religion plays an important role, but not as important as it is in other parts of the country. Look at in the US, when Christians were asked by the Pew Research Center, 68% of Christians living in the US said religion plays an important role in their lives. However, what we clearly see from the evidence in front of us is that Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia stands out by Christians saying religion is very important in their lives. Now keep that in mind, because the second thing coming up is also quite important. And the second thing is, when Christians were also asked that, where are we? Countries with the most Christians in 2020, what we clearly see is that among the top 10 countries in the world, Nigeria comes around, is on that list, countries where Christians rank the highest. But why is this important? Nigeria is in that list of top 10 countries in the world where you have the most Christians, but Nigeria is also on that list, and if we continue letting that go, Nigeria is also on that list of top 10 countries in the world where you have the most Muslim population. Now, why is this important? And let me make myself very clear. Among the countries you've seen, top 10 countries in the world where you have the most Christians and top 10 countries where you have the most Muslims, Nigeria is the only country on that list. Every other country isn't found. So Nigeria finds a peculiar place where we're in the list of top 10 countries with the most Christians, and we're in the list of 10 top countries with the most Muslims. And that is one of the reasons why we see a lot of conflict. We have a strong Christian population and we have a strong Muslim population based on research by the Pew Research Center. In summary, the evidence shows that in Africa, there's no other continent in the world that has as many Christians. You heard me right. There's no other continent in the world that has as many Christians as Africa. 1 in 3 Christians live in Africa. That's the evidence.
But is there any data or that disaggregates or maybe separates in Nigeria by the religion of the victim? Maybe separates the killings in Nigeria about the religion of the victim?
So it depends on what data you, first of all, really want to look at. First of all, let's take a look at the data from the International Institute of Religious Freedom, because that's one of the data that the stakeholders in the US are pointing to. And that's because from their research in 2023, they claim that out of 4,336 persons that were victims of non-state actors that were killed, 88% of that figure were Christians. They also say that out of the 4,153 persons that were abducted in 2023 in Nigeria, 77% of those numbers are Christians. So they point to the fact that majority of those that are being killed and kidnapped are Christians. That's the first point. Now the second point is the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom as well. If you take a look at their 2025 report, they use the word 30,000 Fulani bandits operating in the northwestern region of Nigeria. That is their own information that they've put out, that 30,000 Fulani bandits are operating in the northwestern region. Another report from Open Doors Watch List as well, they provide some information about the top 50 countries where they claim Christians are being persecuted. And from their report, they say that Nigeria is the second country in Africa where you have most Christians being persecuted, and number 7 in the world. So those are the information that we as a country and as a nation have to look at, because those reports are global reports, and those are the reports that shape and influence the global perception and narrative about Nigeria, and we have to keep an eye on those reports to make sure that we significantly get better results.
All right, so but now that we're here, what are the most critical steps that the government can actually take going forward?
It's still by looking at the numbers, and the government says that it's going to be looking at the numbers. We look at the numbers from the armed conflict location and event data on violent extremist incidents in Nigeria. And if you take a look at that, their report looking at number of persons that have been involved in terrorism this year and persons that have been killed January to October, it allows us to know which states we should really focus on and which states are we getting a lot of fatalities. That report points to 3 core states: Borno, Zamfara, Katsina. What you notice by what's in front of us, majority of the states in the North Central are in that list, majority of the states in the Northwest region are in that list. However, Borno, Zamfara, Katsina stands out on top. What is common to these 3 states? Borno shares close borders with Lake Chad, so we clearly see a lot of smuggling and a lot of activities going on between Borno and the Lake Chad region. What is common with Zamfara and Katsina? Zamfara and Katsina share borders with the Republic of Niger. So yes, we see a lot of activities, illegal activities going on within Zamfara and Katsina, but why is that persisting? Because of proximity to Niger. So what is clear is we significantly have to improve our internal operations, but we also have to significantly improve our operations across the border. But beyond this, and it is about the solutions. And yes, we understand that the state of inequality has to be addressed. We understand that the state of justice has to be addressed. But if there's one solution we need to speak to, it is that we have to get more children to school. And what do I mean? The evidence shows that 65% of Muslims in sub-Saharan Africa have no formal schooling compared with 30% of Christians. The summary is a lot of Muslims, based on Pew's Research Center, a lot of Muslims are not going into school in Nigeria, and we need to make sure that we get more children into school. Anne.
All right, but maybe you just take this in 30 seconds. What are the challenges the Nigerian military is facing, especially in ending the war against terrorism? We're seeing change of guards, but what should be done?
In the final analysis, the evidence we really are putting all of this together shows that what we are facing in Nigeria goes beyond the war on terrorism. So the reason why this has persisted, Anne, is because we keep calling it a war on terrorism, but a war on terrorism is just a subset of the sort of war we are facing. We are facing a war on our survival, we are facing a war on unity, we are facing a war on our future. However, if we keep classifying it as a war on terrorism, we'll get the narrative wrong. A war on terrorism is just one of the subset of the wars, of the larger war Nigeria faces. And I think if you take a look at the recent statement by the new Chief of Defense Staff, as you mentioned, he seems to understand it better as well, by clearly seeing that if we take a religious stance, we will not get it, we'll get it wrong. And his position is, we are one people, Muslim and Christian. The real enemy is anyone who profits when we are divided.
All right.
And a lot of
Thank
people
you.
are profiting, and they're profiting based
Thank
on
you very
calling
much.
it a wrong war.
Thank you very much, Chief Data Analyst, and of course, founder of Leadership by Data. Thank you so much for your time on the news at 10. Babajide Ogunsowo.
We'll continue this next week.
We will.